Hello, everybody. It's 20 minutes past the hour, so I think we're ready to restart. I hope you all had a good time in the breakout rooms, which were organized by our sponsors. We're always very happy to have good sponsors for our events, even if they're online, but without our sponsors, we couldn't do these. So let me thank again Highwire, J&J Editorial, Scholastica, and Silverchair, and I hope they give you a good time in the breakout rooms. My name is Eefke Smit. I'm STM's Director for Standards and Technology, and I'm moderating the next session. And in the next session, we'll take you on a tour along STM's most exciting innovation projects. And we've selected 4 of them for you. STM is engaged in a long list of projects and takes many initiatives. If you want to hear more about those, please come back on Thursday on the conference, where we'll be showing you many more. But today, for Society Day, we selected 4 projects in particular, and we selected them on the criterion that they're really ready for adoption and implementation by many more publishers. You know, most of these projects are started by a smaller group of publishers, and at a certain point, they run well, and they're for others to get on board. So that is what you'll hear about the following 4 projects. The first project is on access, easier access, especially off-campus access, which of course in the pandemic now is a more than timely topic. So that will be about our project Seamless Access and Get Full Text Research. And the second project is about peer review, about more transparent peer review, and several pilots that we're doing there. The third project is on detecting image alterations, which is particularly important in the context of trusted research, because image alterations are not good, and we'll be showing you how journals can more easily detect that malpractice. And our last project, but certainly not the least, is about research data, which is such a very popular thing nowadays alongside the publication of papers. We'll be giving you snapshots of 10 minutes only. And to be honest, each of these projects would merit a much longer webinar by itself, which we're also organizing frequently. But today's purpose is really to give you a snapshot so that you can dive deeper into it if you want to and if you've learned more about it. With that said, I would like to give the floor to our very first speaker. That is Heather Staines. She's the Publishers Outreach Manager at Delta Think, and she's very active in our project Seamless Access and Get Full Text Research. And I see the slides are up. And Heather, are you ready
I'm
to
here.
go?
I'm here, Eefke. I tried to share my video, but apparently I can't do that, but that's fine. Won't worry about that.
Do it with your voice.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, take it away.
Thank you so much. This is actually my first STM Society Day, so I'm really excited to be able to join you. And I've got my work cut out for you because, as Eefke mentioned, I'm talking about 2 different projects. I've been fortunate to work for the past 6 months on both GetFTR and Seamless Access, and I want to give you quick overview updates on those today. Joe's driving the slides for me, so next slide, Joe. And we can go to the next one. There, we've got 2 out of the way already. So for those of you who are not familiar with GetFTR, GetFTR was developed and sponsored by the 5 publishers you see there on the right, ACS, Wiley, Elsevier, Springer Nature, and Taylor and Francis. And the goal of GetFTR is to really be where the researchers start their search, their scientific journey. So the collaboration networks, the discovery tools, the library management systems, et cetera. And to give them an indication as far upstream as possible if they have access to content, either because their library has subscribed or if the content is open access. We want to get those researchers to the best available version of the content, and GetFTR can include what we call smart links, which provide authentication if a user is not already logged in at their institution. Primarily, we want to ensure that the content is accessed on the publisher's platform And this is a fully GDPR compliant service. Next slide, Joe. Oh, I think that's backwards. There we go. Just quickly, so you can picture what GetFTR looks like, because I think we imagine these days lots of buttons and things on publisher platforms. The GetFTR buttons actually populate the discovery services. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Excuse me. They populate the discovery services where the researchers begin their search. So here's our researcher. She puts in a search term, and GetFTR can batch response up to 20. It will provide her little indicators next to the search results, and that's because an API behind the scenes has gone to the participating publishers and checked those entitlements in real time. So it's completely up to date. The researcher can click on the link and go directly to her article. Next slide. This is just another depiction of the process. So GetFTR works whether you are on campus or off campus. If you're on campus, you'll be moved through automatically to the article. And if you're off campus and you're not logged in already, you'll be diverted through a brief login workflow. Next slide. GetFTR was constructed to provide flexibility for both publishers and integrators. So if you're a publisher, you can decide whether you want to send the user to the PDF or to the HTML as a default. Publishers can also provide unentitled users with an alternative version. This is being tested now, and we're looking forward to seeing this out there in the wild. An alternative version might be an author's accepted manuscript, it might be a read-only version of the article, or it might be some truncated version of the different parts of the article. We're open to different options there. Flexibility on the integrator side, they can either add a little GetFTR indicator you see to the right of that third result there in the bottom, or they can provide the button as visibility when you hover over Read PDF. Next slide, please. So publishers and platforms participating so far, the first 5 founding publishers that I mentioned there at the top, and recently joined by Karger, ASCE, and our newest participating publisher, Future Science Group. Next up are going to be IOP, AIP, AMA, and a lot of other publishers that are working on it now. On the platform side, if you do use a platform host, Adapon's been good to go for some time. Silverchair is next up in May, and KGL, Pub Factory, and Highwire will be coming on board later this year. Next slide, please. On the integrator side, and in many ways, this is more important because this is where the GetFTR buttons or links are going to be visible. We have the digital science products listed there, Mendeley, the researcher app. Chorus uses GetFTR for auditing to make sure there are OA copies of content available. Semantic Scholar, Springer Nature Experiments, and Cactus. And right up on the horizon, Web of Science, LibKey, Citrus, and some other Elsevier properties, to name a few. Next slide, please. This is probably the most important slide if I want to draw your attention to certain resources. In February, there was a great article, Lessons Learned a Year with GetFTR, that will give you a lot of information about GetFTR recently. We held in February a publisher and integrator webinar, and in December a librarian webinar. Both of those have recordings that are available on the website. Next up is going to be support for aggregators and publishers with multiple platforms. We added IP authentication, as I mentioned before, back in the fall, and it's privacy preserving. A self-service portal for speedy onboarding is coming, as well as enhanced publisher reports about traffic that comes through GetFTR. And we'll hold a webinar with Silverchair on June 15th. Any other integrators who want to hold a webinar with us, we'd be happy to do that. Next slide, please. These 2 slides are here so you can refer to the deck later for next steps. So Joe, if I can just ask you to go ahead to a few more slides, and we'll go over into seamless access. One more. So next up, seamless access. Next slide, please. So for those of you who are not familiar with seamless access, it was put together by a coalition of 4 founding organizations: NISO, our own STM association, Internet2, and JAUNT. And it's part of a community-driven effort to support seamless access to information resources, scholarly collaboration tools, and shared research infrastructure. Next slide. So seamless access was designed to improve the user experience and to make SAML login easier to navigate. Information about the user's institution is saved in the local browser. We get the user's permission to store that information. We work with trusted service providers that provide access to that. And this reduces the number of times that a user has to search for their institution in federated access menus. Next slide, please. The goals for seamless access, as I said, improve user experience, continued infrastructure development in the ScholComm space. We want to reduce the disruption that's caused by folks going to pirated sites and improve on-campus security. Next slide, please. Here are the participating publishers so far, and I want to draw your attention to the newest participating publishers, American Institute of Physics and Institute of Physics, which I think is online soon. And we've got next up on deck, I think, is going to probably be Emerald, with some more coming on in Q2. Next slide, please. Again, this is the most important slide to draw your attention to. We'll be holding an introductory webinar for those of you who aren't familiar already on May 10th, and you can register now via the STM website under events. And this will kick off a series of webinars. On this introductory webinar, I'll be giving a more in-depth introduction. Heather Flanagan will be on hand to talk about any technical questions you might have, and the whole thing will be moderated by our brand new CIO, Hilke Kors. Updates on some of the working groups within Seamless Access, because there are many. The ReFed Steering Committee recently approved anonymous authorization and pseudonymous authorization. Heather Flanagan participated in a NISO Plus roundup back in February that will provide a lot of good information for you. We have a newly formed WAIF entry disambiguation working group. This comes into play in places where there are multiple institutions with the same name, and it might not be clear to the user which one is their institution. So look for updates on that. We have a contract language working group, a very active outreach committee, which recently put up a new use case on the website. This is a case study with the Georgetown Medical Center Library, and it's on that WAIF entry disambiguation issue that I just mentioned. We've also been holding integrators workshop for the publishers who are already using Seamless Access, and that's been amazing. We've held 2 so far, and we plan to do those quarterly. So as you come on board, you'll receive an invitation to that. Next slide, please. This is my final slide. Last week, there was some information about potential security threats that might impact Seamless Access. I did want to assure you that this is not the case. Seamless Access itself does not use keys that are exchanged between an IDP operator and a service provider operator and a federation operator. We are not an identity provider or a service provider. We just support them in the discovery process. So within that part of the process, there are no attributes exchanged. Our terms of service require that service providers be part of a federation to take advantage of established security and trust models. So you can rest assured that there aren't any security issues that are going to result from this issue with Seamless Access. And I think that is my last slide. So I am happy to take any questions. We're right at time. If anyone has a question. The contact for the WAIF group, it would be Heather Flanagan. She's Heather at seamlessaccess.org. Not to be confused with Heather Staines at seamlessaccess.org. It can be a little bit confusing. We're the Heathers.
Hey, and this Heather is, we can see you now. You're in the picture. Thank you so much, Heather. That was nicely in time and a very good snapshot. We're taking questions in the chat. Don't hold back. And we're doing questions per presentation, so don't hold them up until the end. We have a few more minutes, and let me repeat the question that I've heard most often in webinars, because there might be some people in the audience who have the same question. If you're a publisher and not very big size, how complicated is it to onboard either on GetFTR or on Seamless Access or on both?
Yeah, so there's a couple of dependencies. If you are hosted, of course, you're likely going to need to get your platform host involved. So it's very, very important to note which platform hosts are complete and when. If you run your own platform, then of course it's a different set of questions. Primarily, publishers do have some mechanism in place now to support federated access. So it's not going to be a lot of technical work, but seamless access will require a seamless access button to be on your user interface. And we all know what prime real estate that is. So most of the conversations, and I direct you to the documentation on the seamlessaccess.org website for things that you can consider in placement and text on your button. For GetFTR, as I mentioned, it's a behind the scenes consideration. It's an API, so it won't involve real estate on your platform, unless you know that one thing I didn't mention is we're hoping that GetFTR links will be possible in the future with references, which could affect the reference links on your website. So stay tuned for that. Elsevier is working on that now. So we're really talking about the GetFTR API, and that takes really as much time as you're going to throw resources at it. So one of the ideas we have for an upcoming webinar is to take some publishers who have created an API and have them talk about how much resources they devoted to it and how much time it takes. So if you have a couple of people and you can put them on it full time, it might be very quickly and just go, over a couple of days. If you have a larger team and they've got a lot of things on their plate, which I think is probably most of us these days, you may want to schedule it. But we're hoping we can tap into the resources from those who've already done their APIs, so you can learn from those who've gone before you.
Okay. And I see no questions in the chat, so let me repeat another one that I heard at several webinars. What is the immediate benefit for the publisher who onboards?
Yeah, so when seamless access, I would say COVID has displaced a lot of people. And we're not sure when we might be back within IP authentication range on campus. So the publishers who have presented in the integrator workshops thus far that we've had at Seamless Access, it's very difficult to separate out the impact from the pandemic displacement versus the impact that might have been there with seamless access being turned on. Now, as we're passing like the 1 year mark, we'll be able to compare, for example, April 2021 with April 2020, and then we'll have a little bit better an idea. We have seen an increase in the use of federated access, but we'll now shortly, even as we speak, be able to look at, what might be attributed specifically to seamless access. On the GetFTR side, we're talking about folks who are starting their research journeys not on the publisher platform, which we know is really a lot of people. So how many people might hit a wall and not be able to get through to content that they're entitled to? And that could just be because they can't remember their username and password, or it's a complicated login process and it's not clear to them which path they should take. So signaling to them as far as possible upstream, hey, you're going to be able to get through to this either because it's open or because your library has provided you access, should lead to a larger number of user journeys being completed. And again, we're gathering information from our participating publishers, and we know that there's more successful access via the flow. We know that from the analytics that we can capture, that our publishers can capture, and that our integrators can capture. We're just now, though, being able to sort out what is possibly pandemic related versus what can be attributed to GetFTR. So it's very much a work in progress, but it's definitely something that we're looking forward to being able to measure.
Yeah. So to summarize that a little bluntly and overall, it's if you want to get usage up, these are essential projects to use. And in times of a pandemic, this counts probably even more because people work so remotely. Let's check once more. I see nothing in the chat. So, well, in that case, Heather, thank you so much for this very clear explanation. And everybody in the audience, if you want to hear more, please come to the webinar on May 10. And you can find the way to register it. To register, you can find that on the STM website, but also on the special website of Seamless Access and of GetFTR. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Bye-bye. And then we're ready to go on to the next project, which is about peer review. And of course, transparent peer review is really a topic that gets discussed more and more. And STM started a big project on that last year. And we have Lois Jones here of the American Psychological Association, the APA, to tell us more about that project. Lois, are you ready to go?
I am. So you can hear me, and I believe you should be able to see my PowerPoint now, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect.
You have the floor.
Thank you. I believe Heather said this as well, but this is my first time attending this, so thank you for having me, and this has been very interesting so far. So yes, I'm Lois. I'm a peer review manager at the American Psychological Association, and I am here representing the standard taxonomy for peer review work group and updating everybody just on the status of our pilot. So the first question we generally get when we talk about this is why? Why do we need a taxonomy? We know peer review, everybody kind of generally knows what it looks like. So what's the purpose of this? So the first big reason is transparency. There's a lot of open science stuff going on, but there's also a lot of transparency initiatives for authors. And so this gives authors and reviewers more insight into exactly what's going on in the process, which, you know, it's often a black box. Authors, and reviewers, it's very important in their career what happens during peer review. So it's just fair to give them more information and to make it more clear and easier to locate. But also consistency. It's really easy to think that everybody's using the same word in the same way, and that we mean exactly the same thing when we say peer review, but there do tend to be deviations based on experiences, based on publisher and field norms, and having a shared vocabulary early on makes conversations as things get more complicated just easier, because even when we started the work group, we were like, okay, peer review looks like this. And we immediately found out that there were things that we had assumptions about as one publisher that other publishers were like, well, what about this case? So it just becomes more complicated faster than you would expect. And so this just helps kind of clear things up. It also helps journals demonstrate the integrity of the process. So as a result, it can strengthen the trust in peer review. Here's a timeline of how we developed the taxonomy. You can see a lot of us have spent a lot of time on this project. We've gotten feedback on 2 different drafts, and we've been using this year as our pilot. We have a ton of great publishers involved. You can see all the logos at the bottom there. Apologies if I've forgotten anybody, but it's been great having experts from different publishers weigh in on things, because pulling that expertise has just been so valuable in the development of this. So here is the taxonomy itself in brief. The scope of this is specifically peer review for journal articles, I should say. We have discussed, you know, potentially going into other types of content like books in the future, but for now it is just journal articles. And we are aware that this only covers, you know, the idea is it covers the majority of peer review models, but we do know that there are going to be exceptions that are not covered by this, and that's okay, because the idea is that this is a document that will grow over time, and we will add things as we kind of figure it all out. So the taxonomy itself describes the review model in 4 elements. And that's identity transparency, which is basically just a list of all the options for whose identity is known throughout the peer review process. And then the second one is who the reviewer interacts with during the process. And then what information about the review process is actually published at the end. So in some cases, you might have all identities visible throughout peer review, but the third item is really like, is that then revealed to readers of the articles or to the public? And you can see all the other things included in there. And then the fourth one is whether post-publication commenting takes place officially, you know, through the journal. And so two examples here are just the top one is very kind of brief, the traditional model of single anonymized, the reviewer is only interacting with the editor, likely just submitting their review report, probably through a system. And then none of the information is published at the end. The only published outcome of this is the article itself. And then the second example is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, and that is all identities are visible throughout the process. The editor and the reviewers interact, but then the reviewers might interact with each other. And then upon publication, you can have the review reports and the actual reviewer identities published with the article. And then there's open commenting. So we hope that at this point, like these are pretty self-explanatory. We do have more details open up on an OSF link. It's at the end of this PowerPoint, but also if you just Google STM Peer Review Taxonomy, OSF, it'll come up pretty much right away because we have had some questions here and there about what exactly certain things mean, which is great because then we can figure it out. So that's what the taxonomy actually looks like. So then the question became, how do publishers use this? What's the most useful thing for them to do with it? And we have two suggested methods. So one is on the journal information page, whether that is a guide to authors, whether it is instructions to authors, whatever the publisher calls it, wherever they find it most useful to have that there. And then in the article itself. And you can also see the other things that we suggest having in the article, which are, like the dates of submission, how many reviews were submitted, the rounds of revision, things like that. And so phase one of the pilot was to implement the taxonomy on journal websites and see if authors or reviewers had questions. So by this point, we had put the first draft out. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people in the field. We had circulated amongst our own colleagues, and I believe we'd asked some different editors in different fields to take a look at it. So we were reasonably confident, it made sense, it was useful, but really you don't know until you put it out there for a lot of people to see. And so we, that was the goal, is to post on different websites, see the feedback. So the results of that are actually very good. We have at least 42 journals at this point that are participating from 9 different publishers. Definitely open to more if you would like to join in. The editors have been very positive about this change, and we've gotten some good questions. And, this is a nice low barrier to entry step, and it's often, the language that we're adding is often supplemental to what the journal already has. So most journals, it seems, have some sort of information about like the masking and who sees what, but this just makes it exactly kind of to the point, very clear. So on this slide, you can see this is an Elsevier journal, and this is on currently a live website. This is in progress, something is posted. And so you can also see this is one of the APA journals. And I have that inserted on the just journal website, instructions to authors, right below where we have some instructions about masking. And then this is an example from Springer. And so the nice thing is you can see it's very, very similar. That's the idea. That's the point of it. It's standard. If an author is going between 3 different publishers, you can see exactly how they compare against each other. And so this is, like I said, a very nice low kind of effort task for publishers to do. There's not, like, it's mostly just talking to the editor, seeing, does this match your model? Are you good with this language? And then posting it on the website. So that has been great. We're soliciting feedback on this right now. You can see a little questionnaire on some of these where if an author runs across it and they're like, I don't know what this means, or I think this is wonderful, we can, get feedback on that. So then phase 2 of the pilot was to determine the scope of implementing this on the article level, which obviously is a bigger lift. A couple of reasons for this is that journals can have multiple models based on their submission type or the author preference. So this lets the journal be more specific for each manuscript. Also, then it allows for the more nuanced information, such as number of reviewers and rounds of review, because the journal could say, we try to get 3 reviews for all submissions, but then, maybe one has more, one has, fewer reviewers. So this is much more precise. It also preserves the model for the reader. So between editorships or for whatever reason, a journal could change their model just down the line, and then that information's lost. There's not, I don't think there's like very good archival information to connect that back based on a journal website. So if it's with the article itself, the reader always knows, and that transparency just lives with the content. So overall goal for this part of the pilot was to map the changes needed for the taxonomy to be applied on the article level. So we are still working on this, but what we found is really good news again. So the initial assessments of the major peer review systems show that there is existing functionality via JATS XML that would make this a relatively low cost implementation. I believe when we looked at it, it's essentially like a lot of staff time, but there's not development in the major systems that would need to be done like customizable, just more configuration. So we don't have a recommended display model. We're not saying, oh, it needs to look like this, similar, you know, unlike the websites where we're like, this is the easiest way of showing it, because since every publisher, the PDF or the published version looks different, we're leaving it more up to the publishers to decide what makes sense. So the versions on here, they're not actually in use yet, but they're mock-ups of like what this could look like. And you can see just like how nice and concise it would be on an article. Also, if your publisher uses Crossmark, they do have existing elements that can make this a less complex project without needing to fully redesign your PDF. So it's a lower lift in those cases. We have recently just involved production experts from some of the participating publishers, and we're working on our initial implementation for this part of the pilot in May. So new participants are welcome. If anybody sees this and gets really excited and wants to join in, let us know. But we were very encouraged by a lot of the functionality already existing. So we're excited to see kind of what this will look like in practice. But if you want more information about what the actual taxonomy, you know, reads like, the specifics of it, the OSF link is here. If you would like to join in, you can email Joris. His email is here. But if you have questions specifically about anything I have said, feel free to just also email me directly, or I think we have time now for questions. But thank you.
Thank you, Lois. That is a very, very exciting project. And it's good to see that so many journals participate already. While we open a chat for questions, again, please don't hold back. Fire away with your questions. I have one for you. Maybe I missed it, but what is it you're exactly testing in the pilot? When is the pilot a success?
So what we're testing in the pilot is, one, if the taxonomy is really showing what is happening in the journals. And so one of the things for just the journal level websites, that's why a lot of them have the little survey links. So if somebody reads that and, you know, again, like somebody has to feel very strongly to respond to a survey on the website for that. But I do think that if somebody looks at it and they think, no, this is not representative at all, or if they're just so excited because it's so clear for the first time, let's say, for maybe that specific publisher, getting the feedback from them would show that part is successful. I think hearing specifically from editors saying, yes, this is great, because I know a couple of the editors I contacted, they were like, oh, right, like we have this, but like this is so much more, you know, more easy to grasp as you're like navigating all the pages. As far as the second part of the pilot, so that is going through, like basically this whole year is our pilot year. And the success on that is if we can have some publishers successfully get that information onto the article, because that's just such great transparency to the readers to know what's gone on in the peer review process. Because like I said at the beginning, it's a black box to a lot of people. And for, you know, us in publishing, sometimes we're like, oh yeah, this is just what peer review looks like. You don't know this stuff, the trust in the process. But as there's more open science, and as, you know, people really kind of talk about it more, like readers want to know, authors want to know this. And I think that a success for that part would be seeing it on the articles, and also just having a good way of recommending to other publishers how to adopt it.
Okay, and what I was wondering is, because the taxonomy also gives so many options for more open and more transparent peer review, and for sharing more information from the process. Has it worked as an incentive for some editors who said, oh yeah, we always did it in the traditional way, you know, single anonymous, no review reports, only correspondence with the editor. But now that I see this whole spectrum of possibilities, yeah, let's do a few other things. Or what have you seen so far in the pilot?
I think that's a really good question. And Joris, you can jump in if you have more information on this, but I haven't seen that just yet, but I know that that was really one of the kind of hopes when we were discussing it. Was originally this started as open peer review terminology, and then we're like, okay, let's pull it more like fully back and just say standardized to encapsulate all of it. But for me, I am hopeful that this means editors look at it and they think, oh, here's more stuff we can do. So I don't know if it's happened just yet, but I think that it's the beginning of the conversation to encourage it, yes.
Okay, then last question, and then we move on to the next project. My last question is, would your pilot be helped if many more journals join it? Does it help to have more titles included in the pilot, or would you say, let us first run the pilot, and when we've brushed up the taxonomy one more time, then we're ready to go? What would you prefer?
I mean, I'm always a big fan of having as many opinions and as many people's feedback as possible. I know that especially when we're now getting into the second phase, not everybody who participated in the first phase can participate in the second. So I think that what we're hoping is maybe more people even volunteering for that, or, you know, both, and just opting into whichever one they can do, so we can see it across a few. Joris, definitely, I would defer to his opinion on that, because I know he's the one having to kind of organize all of the participants, but I think that we are looking to get as many publishers involved as possible, just because you get more of the feedback across the board.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes. Please, Joris.
Definitely confirm that. I think that as Lois said, the results of the first month were really successful, and a lot of enthusiasm also with the editor community. So definitely open for more participants, more journals, and more publishers. So please contact me if you are willing to join this project.
Sounds excellent. Good. Well, at that note, Lois, Joris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And success with the pilot. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more of you from you at next STM meetings. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, next snapshots, another exciting project, and this is about the detection of image alterations. You know, in many papers, the image is the core of the paper and the core of the results that are being presented, and they should be honest and comply to all the rules of integrity, but many journals find that sometimes images have been altered, bits of data left out or brushed up to make them look a little better. And a working group within STM has been looking at that problem, and one of their first deliverables that will soon be available for you, not yet today, we had hoped it was today, but it's still in the making, but it's really coming soon now, is a video that you could use for all your journal editors, can offer to your journal editors so that they can become more aware of this problem. And Ijsbrand Jan Albersberg, who's from Elsevier, but who's also the chair of STM's Standards and Technology Committee, will be presenting you what you can expect from those videos. Ijsbrand Jan, I see you turned on the video and the microphone. Are you ready to go? Can I hand over to you?
Yes, you can. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. And your slides are also in view, so take it away.
Okay, yes, and I will at some moment also try to show some parts of the video because some are already finished, so I hope that will be visible as well. Okay, yes, let's talk about, and then I need to go to the other screen. Let's talk about image alterations, image manipulations, image duplications, image aberrations, a lot of different words that are all a little bit related or very much related, but sometimes also a little bit different. There are a lot of reasons why in these days there's an increase in image alterations to be seen across journals. I'm not going to list them all. I've listed a few of them, but I really would like to focus initially just on the right side of the screen, is that across the journals, most image alterations and duplications that are detected by the journals are not malicious in nature. They are often caused by just mistakes. The wrong image is being uploaded, and then it suddenly turns out that there is a duplication in the submission, or yeah, for some other reason the wrong image is uploaded. And in many cases there is what sometimes is called beautification. An author that thinks that the image should be just improved to show better the actual results of the image, and then the author is brushing context away, or is sort of changing some contrast, and those are, yeah, of course, not the right things to do. The author thinks they are right, they are noticed by the editor, and then of course they are often quickly solved, because then we ask the author for the original image. But those are the biggest problems, the biggest quantity of image alterations that are noticed, but also those image alterations should be caught and should not occur in the scientific articles, because later those might, if it would come out at that time, later it might sort of give some doubt on the actual results shown. So just having said that, image alterations is in a number of different categories. If you talk about the different types of alterations, the different types of aberrations, there's a lot of them. And also what it sometimes complicates, there's also a lot of synonyms for actually the same type of alteration. Flipping and inverting is actually the same. Removal or erasing or brushing is also some of the same type of thing. But these are the key different alterations that happen. If journals or if editors find an image alteration being applied, then usually it's even a combination of those. Thus it's not only one of them just flipping, but it's flipping in combination with stretching and maybe rotation as well. Maybe some brushing has taken place. So actually it's quite complicated to find what is happening there, and also to determine that something has taken place. This is a complexity for both detection tools as well as for editors. And that is why we think that both the detection tools and editors with a good look at these things are both required for the near-term future. Another thing that is to be noticed is the difference between alteration and duplication. Alteration can potentially be solved and be identified using software, but duplication always requires that you know the source from which the image has been duplicated. So detecting duplication really requires a shared database of images. So there immediately we get into a collaboration between publishers is needed to share the database. Duplication has also two dimensions. There's duplication within the article and the duplication across articles. And of course, duplication within the article, then you don't need that database. But if you talk about duplication across articles, then yeah, the publishers have to work together to create a database. SDM has started a working group on image alteration and duplication detection. So not, as we sometimes say, in working group on image alteration and duplication. No, the word detection is, of course, extremely important here. The objectives you find on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side you see the different publishers, but also submission systems that work on this initiative. One of the objectives in this working group is indeed classify image alterations and duplications from the ones that are not acceptable but can be corrected by, for example, sending in new images, And of course, the images that really smell like they are manipulated, there's malicious intent to change images in place. So we are going to create a classification of what are the different type of alterations and what should publishers do with those. Another thing is that we want indeed a video being created that lists different types of image manipulations and how they can be detected by editors. The video is really meant to show best practices and to serve as a public resource for all journals and journal editors to evaluate images. We will make it freely available under CC BY license, and it will really, we hope that it benefits the wider research community and journal editors specifically. It consists of 5 modules, an introduction, then we definitely focus on Western plots because those are the images that these days have the most problems, micrograph images, photographs, diagrams, and then at the end we will talk and display and show some easy tools that editors can use to compare 2 images, for example, or to analyze a single image for duplication. I want to show 2 different fragments of the video because, as I said, the video is not yet finished, but there are some parts finished, and I will show those 2 fragments. Okay, this is fragment 1, and it's about cloning.
Cloning is generally only detectable if the cloned area comes from elsewhere within the same image, so that we can spot a duplication. In this example, small elements repeat throughout the individual panels and even across panels. This problem of small elements repeating may also be found in other types of images, such as histograms and scatterplots. In this example, a small constellation of dots in the top right quadrant appears several times.
And as you see, this is still explaining the problem. It's not yet about how to detect this and tools for detection this, but it's about a problem. This is from the first introductory module. Then we have a second fragment for you, and that's about duplication.
The next example shows a flipped duplication where some elements have been added or removed. At first glance, these 2 micrographs may not look very similar to each other, but you may notice this 4-leaved clover-like element in both of them. It's only when you flip one of the panels on its head that you notice that the 2 are in fact quite similar. In one of the previous examples, the panels show slightly different sections of the same image, marked here in yellow. In addition, some elements have been altered. When we overlay the 2 images, it appears that they are almost perfectly identical. However, there are some small areas that show up as red and green. These are the regions that have been altered. This is deceptive and, yes, not easy to spot.
That, of course, the part of the training video will be on tools and on mechanisms and on helpful tips on how to spot these manipulations and alterations. So the next step is indeed finishing all the 5 modules that we are creating, and then we will make them available and announce that through the usual STM Matters communication channels. They will be available through for reuse using the Creative Commons CC BY license. And then, of course, the work of the working group is focusing on the 3 other initiatives: best practices for handling image integrity issues. What should editors do when they, for example, encounter an image integrity issue? Classification of the different types of image alterations or aberrations, and then indeed criteria and an assessment of detection solutions, technology solutions, software solutions, on what solutions work well for the detection of scholarly image alterations or duplications. At the end, I would really like to express my thanks for the working group that has been working on this, and especially for Jana Christopher, who has been helping us in creating the video and making all the examples. So yeah, are there any questions?
Thank you, IJsbrand-Jan. This is very impressive work. I hadn't seen it yet. You've brought a scoop to our conference, and I must say this is high-level Sherlock Holmes work. If I look at the pictures, very, very interesting, and great work from your working group. I didn't see any questions yet in the chat box, but a question of very general interest that I have for you is you said that, and we can also see and read everywhere, that the whole discussion about image alteration has come up more and more, and is sort of increasing and yeah, taking more participants. But do we have any idea of the size of this problem?
There's a lot of discussion about it. Usually people refer to the paper of Elizabeth Big that at one moment said that there was at least 4% of the papers that are talking about Western blots have duplicated images in there. But that has, of course, two that percentage has two connotations. One, it's only about articles on Western blots, and Western blots, we all know that they are more frequently manipulated than others. Secondly, of course, the 4% also does not mean that they are malicious duplications. They could only be, for example, duplications of control bands. Then it's less malicious, but it's just not the right thing to do. So I think 4% is a little bit overestimated. The normal number that I hear from publishers from the different fields is a few tenths of a percent, so 0.1, 0.2% of papers might be affected by image alteration. You're on mute, Eefke.
Sorry, yes. There has a question has come in from Wayland Butler. Are there particular fields that seem more susceptible to alteration than other fields? So areas where editors have to be more cautious?
Life sciences is definitely a field that is that has more problems on image manipulation, but that might also be in part because more eyes are focused on that. Material science is also something that might have an issue with image alterations and image manipulation. But life sciences is definitely the one that everybody talks about. But that's in part also because, as I said, maybe more eyes are looking at it.
Okay, last question. The bits of the video that you showed, the voiceover explained that some things are more difficult to detect with the human eye than others. Would it be a possibility that in the future we have software or maybe AI tools that help us in this?
Yes, definitely. There is already software available or in development or even available for that. That the software gets better and better. I think we are definitely at a turning point here, that until about now the software was not yet good enough and not yet sufficiently scalable. And now the software, there is software that is really able to detect some of the problems that I presented in one of the slides. And yeah, scalability might still be a problem because software sometimes takes a long time still to analyze all the images, but we are definitely at a turning point that software becomes available. So the answer is yes, it will. In the future, it will definitely be present, and at this moment, yeah, it's slowly happening.
Great, thank you. Sounds as if your working group still has many exciting things to do. And I would say to the audience, stay tuned. We'll definitely let you know when the videos are finished. They're nearly there, as you can see. And we hope that you'll be able to use them for all your editors. And with that, I see that the next presentation has already more or less started. We see Joris back on stage. Good to see you, Joris. We already saw your name also involved in several of the other projects that passed by. Joris is STM's Director for Research Integrity, also a topic of increasing importance. And he will be presenting to us the success of the research data program that STM started last year. And it focuses on sharing, linking, and citing research data. It's all very exciting as well. Joris, are you ready to take it away?
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
And I wanted to start maybe not by explaining the importance for research data for science. I assume everybody is aware of it. It of course is an important element of open science. It is very important for reproducibility into science integrity. And not to forget, it can serve as input and training data for AI, for which we have a session on Thursday. So sorry for that promotion for Thursday's session. What is important, this slide is really meant to show the important role that publishers play in the scholarly ecosystem around research data and the important successes we had in the past. On the top left, you see the results of a survey held in 2020. It's part of the State of Open Data report. And it is the answer to the question, what circumstances would motivate researchers to share data? And you can see that our work is very important there. When you think about full data citation, co-authorship of papers, and journal publisher requirements, all elements, of course, that belong to us as publishers. We as publishers have also been involved in various infrastructure projects. As colleagues, for example, we have worked with DataCite since over a decade, but also in terms of individual efforts of publishers, we had made quite some successes. This graph shows the results of publishers making a data availability statement, a piece of text in the article, explaining if there's data available and how readers can find it, the effect it had on the number of availability statements in articles, which really increased after that decision. So our role is very important, and we have actually had some successes. And based on that, inspired by that, we organized the Research Data Year in 2020. And it's an action-based program, as Eefke explained, really geared towards speeding up the implementations of policies, of tools, of services, helping authors to share the data alongside publications. So this is a infographic showing the results, and I'll use that to explain what we did, but also what we're going to do in the next research data years. First, the participants, and this is really nice. We started with a few publishers, but now we have 21 participating publishers. And as you can see, it's a very good mix of larger publishers, but also smaller publishers, and of course, society and society publishers, from the physical sciences to arts, humanities, and social sciences. It is a group whereby publishers help each other. We share information, we have regular meetings, and it's really a forum whereby best practices and information and tips and tricks can be shared very efficiently. We have regular meetings as a group, but we also have subgroups focusing on specific areas such as social science and the arts humanities, which of course have their own challenges. But again, the research data is not something that, of course, publishers play an important role in, but it's the responsibility of a way bigger ecosystem. So there are funders, there are policymakers, there are institutions, and not to forget, of course, the repositories all play a very important role in making research data fair. Hence, we work with various organizations in our program. We have organizations like the Center for Open Science, Crossref, and DataCite in the steering committee alongside various publishers. And also we have regular meetings, calls, and sessions with various organizations, again, from institutions to library associations, university organizations, etc. So it's a collaborative effort, and again, we work very intensely with many players in the ecosystem, but it also allows us to work with organizations like EOSC, the European Open Science Cloud. So we are a Fair is Fair member. So this project is really going in really good cooperation with many players. Importantly, we have a website, and on that website we collect information. If you go to stmresearchdata.org, you will find basically explanation of the various policies that you can implement, how to implement data availability statements, SCOLEX, etc. So it's really a very useful resource for all publishers starting or in the process of implementing these various tools. As I said, it's an action-based program, so we want to have results. And this is a summary of the results of last year. By the way, we also have a full dashboard explaining a bit more in detail what we did last year and what the results were. But these are the highlights. So when we started last year, the participating publishing then, on average, 29% of their journals had a journal policy. Of course, a very important start. It all starts with having a policy explaining to authors what is expected of them in terms of data sharing alongside publication. At the beginning, it's 29%. At the end of the year, it was 52%. We are also focused on rolling out these data availability statements, a very important aspect of research data sharing. In the beginning of the year, we started with 7%. Now, 15% of articles of the participating publishers have a data availability statement alongside their article. And last but not least, SCOLEX. And with SCOLEX, we mean basically that the publishers submit their linking information to Crossref. Crossref processes the information means that the links between articles and datasets are established and can be retrieved, which is a very important element around incentive, creating incentive for publishers, because that means that the citation can be counted and also serve as input for their recognition as researchers. So beginning of the year, 34%, now 43%. So we were very happy. Again, it's a fantastic group of people. It's a very, I think, inspiring, collaborative group of publishers, but also, again, the wider group with the funders, with various organizations we work with. But of course, we are not there yet, more work to be done. Hence, we decided to extend the program. So it's that meant we had to rebrand it a bit, STM Research Data Program, and we continue with the organizations and the publishers, and we are very much inviting people to join us in this journey. Something about the focus. We are remaining, the focus remains on share, cite, and link. So more journal policies, more journals with data policies, more availability statements, and more journals that connect to SCOLEX, and that is a special focus for us. Our feedback is that it's still quite difficult, or quite a work, not difficult I would say, but cumbersome to implement SCOLEX. So we have made information on the website, but also a clear a guide on how to implement SCOLEX, making it much more easy and efficient. You can find the website. So we're going to continue with that in the next year, but also aside the more, say, action and implementation phase, we also realized we have to work on two things. We have focused our alignment very much on the publishers. We make use of a lot of the great work that came out of the RDA. Specifically, there is a journal data policy framework that we use. Basically, when you start to implement the policies, you can choose 6 of those policies. But we realized that we have to work on funder alignment, on aligning our policy with funders as well. Publishers come at the end of the research cycle, and in order for the process to be very efficient and very seamless for the authors, we have to make sure that the alignment has to be at the entire workflow. So we're working with funders actively on that with the RDA, and another focus we have is on repository recommendation. With that, we mean if authors want to publish, if they publish, it's also for them a very logical time to share their data, and they're coming to us as publishers to learn which repositories are the right ones. So we want to make sure that whatever we recommend to the authors is in line with industry standards and according to the consensus of the entire ecosystem. So that's a specific focus for that as well. So overall, it's a very nice project. I very much enjoy working with everyone, and thanks to everyone, because again, it's because of the publishers work so actively in our working groups and our webinars. So it's really nice to see what we can do together in this, and looking forward to welcoming more people to join us. So if you're interested, please go to the website or contact me by email or ask a question now.
Thank you, Joris. That sounds very good. Again, I see no questions in the chat box, but we can do 1 or 2 questions. So let me pose the most obvious ones. If I'm a society publisher and I've never done anything about the sharing of research data for my authors, where should I start?
It should start with a journal policy. And again, luckily, a lot of work has been done. If you go to the website, you'll find there the framework of the data policies. And basically, it's a very nice overview of the various journal policies that you can choose from, because every journal, every community has a different need for research data. So in the resources we have from the website, it's an easy guide to decide which policies are the best fitted for your journals. It's also something, of course, you can discuss with the editors and your community, and then it starts with implementing that particular policy. That's the most logical place to start. I would say maybe earlier join the program, because then everything will be even more easy.
And can people join the program just like that? They just send an email to you?
Yes, yes. So what we ask from the participants, again, is to join the regular meetings. What we also like to know is what the progress is, so we can, again, update our dashboard and show also the outside world what we're doing. Another important element is that we want to be very transparent about the program and the progress. So what we ask participants is to share their results with the program.
Okay, well, that sounds like a very encouraging call to everybody. So if you want to do more in the area of research data, contact Joris and he'll help you to get you going. And on that note, we come to the end of this session. To summarize, we wanted to give you a tour along the horizon of 4 exciting projects that we're entertaining as STM for our members. And they're all in the area of innovations. They're about easier access, better peer review, no image alterations in the articles, and sharing, citing, and linking research data. I hope you've become enthusiastic about it. This is just 4 of the projects that we run. We have many, many more. If you liked this session, please come back on Thursday, because we'll be telling you much more about many other innovative projects of STM, as that will be our Innovations Day. And I think it's now time that I clear the floor. I see Christopher Keneally. Chris, hi, good to see you.
Hello.
Hello to you. You'll be moderating the next session about transformative publishing agreements, and I'll now leave it all to you. And I want to thank the audience and the speakers and our sponsors for being here today. Thank you. And over to Chris.
All right.